What's good, y'all? And welcome to another preseason preview video. In today's video, we're going over the Cleveland Cavaliers. In case this is your first preseason preview video of mine that you're seeing, basically what I do is just go through all of the off-season moves the team made and then look into the future and try to see what we can expect in this upcoming season. Before we get into it, I want to remind you guys to leave a like on this video, subscribe to the channel if you already haven't. Once you're done watching this video, make sure you check out the description. There'll be a link to a playlist that'll bring you to all the other teams I've covered so far. And without further ado, let's take a look at the additions the Cleveland Cavaliers made this offseason. Cleveland had a relatively quiet offseason, but they did go out and hire Kenny Atkinson, the longtime assistant head coach in the NBA and former head coach of the Brooklyn Nets. And they also drafted Jalen Tyson in the first round out of Cal. Honestly, when I was making this video, I was thinking of just putting Kenny Atkinson up there for the additions because I don't know how much playing time Jalen Tyson will be getting in his rookie season. I like what he can bring to the Cavs, having a pretty good size, great athleticism. He can defend and create his own shot a little bit, get to the rim. But they already have so much depth at that wing position. We'll look at the full team a little bit later in this video, but they have tons of guys that can run that shooting guard, small forward type of position. And that's where Jalen Tyson would get most of his minutes. So I don't expect him to really get too many rotational minutes, but I still like the draft pick. But to talk about the guy that will definitely make an impact on the Cavs this season, that is, of course, Kenny Atkinson. I was a little bit surprised when the Cavs fired J.B. Bickerstaff because he's had a pretty successful tenure with the Cavs, regular season-wise at least. He came in when they were still rebuilding in the wake of LeBron, and then he was able to coach up that young team of Darius Garland and Jared Allen and kind of get them into that. I believe they made the playoffs. They at least made the play-in tournament, had a pretty successful season there, and then it kind of just built on top of that. Of course, trading for a guy like Donovan Mitchell will accelerate that process as well. But still, even when they went from rebuilding to contention, I thought JB was doing a pretty good job at coaching. Obviously, though, whether it was the front office or the players, whatever it was, someone in the Cavs organization figured they would be better off with Kenny Atkinson over JB Bickerstaff, and I would probably agree with that. Like I said, I don't think JB's a bad coach, but when they made it to the playoffs first against the Knicks, and they had a very disappointing series. A lot of people picked the Cavs to beat the Knicks in that series. Of course, they got eliminated in 5 games. And then this season, they had a very scrappy first-round series with a very young Orlando Magic team, which, again, most people probably would have picked the Cavs over the Magic. They were able to get out of there in 7, and then it got obliterated by the Celtics. So I would assume this move is to try to get a little bit more playoff success under the Cavs belt. And I think Kenny Atkinson could be the guy to finally get Cleveland over that hump and get them that playoff success that they're looking for. Pretty much since they've had Jared Allen and Evan Mobley, they've had a top-level defense. It's their offense that really looks to need a little bit more of that help, and Kenny is that guy. If you look through the head coaches he's worked under, it's loads of talent, specifically loads of offensive talent. Started off his career as an assistant with the Knicks under Mike D'Antoni. Of course, Mike is one of the guys that revolutionized modern NBA with the amount of three-point shooting we have and the heliocentric system that he set up with James Harden. He is a super innovative offensive coach, and that's just the start for Kenny. After that, he went to the Atlanta Hawks team under Mike Budenholzer, who is historically, I would say, more of a defensive-minded coach. Of course, though, he was there with the Atlanta Hawks, which also had a pretty revolutionized offense, if you want to say, or a modern offense, ahead of their time type of offense with the three-point shooting and more of that spacing and the 5-out type of offense that they ran a lot of. Then, of course, he was the head coach of the Brooklyn Nets, that super young team with D'Angelo Russell, Karis LeVert, Jared Allen, a few familiar faces for your Cavs fans there. He was able to help that team exceed expectations, make the playoffs. They got first rounded, but again, they were a super young team with really low expectations, and he was able to build that team up. He's had a year over there with Ty Lue with the Clippers, another great offensive-minded coach, and then for the last few seasons, he's been with the Golden State Warriors and Steve Kerr, where he won a NBA championship there with them. I know it's a pretty long laundry list of great head coaches that Kenny Atkinson has worked for, but he definitely did not make it on all those guys' staffs on accident. He is a super well knowledgeable coach. I think he could really help the Cavs revolutionize their offense and get more movement, get more shooting, get more spacing. I'm super excited to see what he can really do with this team. This is usually where I would go over the key losses that the team lost this offseason, but the Cavs didn't really have any. The most notable names, and I use notable pretty loosely here, is Marcus Morris Sr. and Damian Jones. I mean, mean, as you guys kind of saw in the additions, the Cavs didn't really bring anyone in this season, and they really didn't lose anyone either. They kind of just said, let's run it back. You know, we like what we had there, change up the head coaching, and just kind of see where we can go from there. As you saw, the most notable names there are Marcus Morris and Damian Jones. Marcus Morris played 12 games and averaged 15 minutes per game. He had that one crazy game against the Celtics in the playoffs. Beyond that, though, he really wasn't much of a contributor to the Cavs. And then Damian Jones played 39 games for them and averaged 6.9 minutes per game. That's, you know, it's nice, but it's still, they're not going to be missing either of these guys. And now that we've went over all of the moves the Cavs made this offseason, let's take a look at a potential rotation we could be seeing. You can really see the continuity here as their rotation is much like what it was last season. In the starting lineup, we have Darius Garland, Donovan Mitchell, Max Strus, Evan Mobley, and Jared Allen. And then coming off the bench, we have Karis LeVert, Sam Morril, Isaac Okoro, Georges Niang, and Dean Wade. Usually when I see a team that just runs it back and doesn't make any changes in the offseason and they literally end the season as one team and begin the next as that same team, it worries me a little bit because the teams around them tend to get better, so it scares me that they're going to kind of just fall down a little bit. In the sense for the Cavs, though, I kind of get where they're coming from. Last season, they ended as the 4 seed out east, winning 48 games. The difference between the 2 seed and them was just a 2-game difference. It was super tight out east there. And throughout pretty much the whole season, they were dealing with injuries to one of their top 4 guys at all times. So it kind of makes sense that they're in their head, they're thinking, we switched up the coaching, so hopefully that'll change a little bit and we'll be healthier. That would be a recipe to win 50 games if you're basing it off this season. It makes a little bit of sense. And I'm not exaggerating with these injuries, as I'm sure a lot of you Cavs fans know. It started off with Evan Mobley and his knee injury, and then directly after that, I want to say like 2 or 3 games after that, Darius Garland breaks his face and is out for a huge chunk of the season. He had to get his jaw wired shut and was eating out of a tube for a little bit, lost a bunch of muscle. You know, really a tough situation for Darius Garland, so prayers up to him. I'm glad he is finally fully healthy and everything. I could see that being a reason why he had a pretty lackluster season last year. And while Evan Mobley and Darius Garland were out for that big chunk in the middle of the season, Donovan Mitchell was damn near an MVP candidate. A lot of people, myself included, honestly, last season thought after those big injuries happened, the Cavs would just slowly start to fall down just because it's 2 of their top 4 guys. A lot of teams can't handle those injuries. Donovan Mitchell, though, he was absolutely hooping his ass off to keep them afloat and put them on that crazy win streak. I want to say it was around like 15 game or so win streak. It was an absolutely amazing January from the Cavs, and it was a lot because of Donovan Mitchell. But then, of course, he eventually would go down with a knee injury, and then for the rest of the regular season after he came back, he was never able to put it back on that MVP level that he once was throughout the beginning of the season. When it came playoffs, he was able to turn it back up and was pretty solid. But still, my point is they can't catch a break. But it doesn't even stop there, because finally when playoffs started, they had their core 4 all ready to go, all healthy, relatively at least. And then a few games into their first round matchup with the Magic, Jared Allen goes down with an abdomen injury and does not return for the rest of the playoffs. So while it was a pretty successful season for the Cavs, it was also a super unlucky and unfortunate season for the Cavs with all of those injuries. They were never able to really see this team fully together and all as one. Like I said, they already established that they have a top level defense with this personnel. They changed up the coaching to help the offense get a little bit of a boost. I really like the core group of guys that they have with Evan Mobley, Jared Allen, Donovan Mitchell, and Darius Garland. And then I also really like the role players that are around them. Guys like Max Strus or Sam Morril, Isaac Okoro, Karis LeVert. All of these guys, I really like what they can bring to this team. And I for once, kind of agree with them just running it back. Now that we know what this Cavs team's gonna look like, let's take a look at one of their biggest strengths. It was not too long ago where the Cavs' biggest weakness was their shooting, but now when you look at it, they have a roster filled with guys that can shoot the ball. Here I have the Cavs' rotational players sorted by 3-point attempts per game alongside their 3-point percentage. League average 3-point percentage last season was 36.6%, so I color coded them by above average, average, and below average shooters. Cavaliers. So the way the Cavs have kind of orchestrated their roster, they have at least one of their two major guards and one of their two major bigs on the court at all times, whether that's Darius Garland and Evan Mobley, or Donovan Mitchell and Jared Allen. Maybe, obviously they have times where all four or three of the four are on the court, but they like to keep at least one at each position group on the court at all times. And I really like what they did with the rest of their roster, filling in guys that can swap in and out of all of these other positions, and they all can shoot. When they do run the two big lineup, obviously the spacing gets a little bit iffy there, as both Jared Allen and Evan Mobley are not really three-point shooting threats at all. So that fifth starter right there, or that fifth spot, is really important to space the floor. And then, like I said, when they have guys where it's, just Evan Mobley, you're going to be running center, they have guys that can fill in there and still give them size and shooting. When they go to the single big, guys like Georges Niang or Dean Wade can come in, and they don't really lose too much of size. I mean, obviously they're going from 2 7-footers to 1 7-footer. You're going to lose some type of size there, but Dean Wade being 6'9" still keeps it afloat. Georges Niang is only 6'7", but he's a super stocky 6'7". He's like a PJ Tucker, kind of body, that solid body. So both of these guys can shoot the ball and space the floor, but they still give that size that they need at the forward position. Then they got guys like Sam Morrell or Max Strus, who are more of the wing position, can run some shooting guard, can run some small forward, but both of these guys are more movement shooters, so they can have it where they're coming off a pin down, or an off-ball screen, just relocating to open space to get the shot off. These guys are really good at just keeping the offense fluid and keeping the defense honest without just collapsing fully. And then they do have some guys that aren't the best shooters, like Isaac Okoro, who is coming off a pretty solid shooting season last year, albeit on pretty low volume, but still, when they're looking for more of a defensive lineup or look, they can insert him in, or Caris LeVert, who's coming off a pretty down season shooting the ball. He could be put in and still gives value by being a creator. They have a bunch of different guys of these role players that fit in. They pretty much all can shoot, and if they're not going to shoot, they're going to be able to bring something else to the lineup. No team is perfect though, so now that we got a chance to look at the strengths, we got to take a look at some of the weaknesses. Here you can see a list of Cavs players and the percentage of their shots that they are assisted by, sorted by 2-point shots that are assisted and 3-point shots that are assisted. In case that didn't really make sense, if you look at Dean Wade, who's first on the list, basically 64.7% of his 2-point shots that he makes were assisted by a teammate, and then 98.7% of the 3-point shots he made were assisted by a teammate. And aside from their top 3 guys, a majority of Cavs players rely heavily on teammates setting up their shots. So in case it wasn't clear, my biggest weakness for the Cavs is the fact that they have a lack of ball handlers / self-creators. They don't really have a lot of them. Those top 3 guys that I was alluding to, first one is Donovan Mitchell. Obviously, he can create his own shot. He's one of the best in the league at creating his own shot. The other guy would be Darius Garland. He comes in second with the least amount of assisted field goals. He's the main point guard. He's doing a lot of the setting up for these other teammates as well as getting his own, so that makes sense as well. And then the guy that came in third was Caris LeVert, who's kind of their spark plug 6-man. He comes off the bench and his job is to score and create, so that also makes sense. Beyond those 3 guys though, as you just saw on that chart, they damn near have no one else. And the Cavs are pretty good at staggering these guys, where at least one of Donovan, Darius, or Caris are going to be on the court at all times. So we're never going to really see a lineup where you're forced to see Dean Wade set up an offense, or forced to see Sam Morrell create a shot off the dribble. They're good with that. But if we're looking grand scheme of things, championship level contending teams, which I'm sure that's what the Cavs want. They want to win a championship. If Caris LeVert is, I don't want to say your third option on offense, because he definitely is not that, but if he's your third option of a ball handler, if he's your third ball handler, I don't really like that. And I don't want to discredit Caris LeVert, because he is a very solid 6-man, and I think he's going to be able to flourish in that role. But when you look at other teams like the reigning champion Boston Celtics, for example, I would take everyone in their starting 5 besides Kristaps Porzingis to be my ball handler over Karis LeVert. I don't think that's a hot take. Even a team that's closer to the Cavs tier than those top two Eastern Conference juggernauts, a team like the Orlando Magic, for example, they got a guy like Jalen Suggs, they have Paolo, they have Franz, they have Cole Anthony. I'm sure I'm missing some of those guys, but that's already 4 guys that I would probably rather have over Karis LeVert. And again, Donovan Mitchell, like I said, is one of the best at creating his own shot, so I'm not really worried about that aspect. Darius Garland, although he is coming off a down season, I do expect him to kind of come back a little bit. I'm not saying he's going to be an all-star again, but I do think he's going to progress back to the mean and be better than what he was last season, better at getting his own shot and better at setting up his other teammates. I don't think it's going to be a horrible situation for the Cavs, but I also think a roster constructed in this way is how we saw what happened Game 6 versus the Magic, where Donovan Mitchell scored 18 points in the fourth quarter, which is a great game. You know, you would think that that's a fantastic quarter, and it is. He was the only Cav to score in that fourth quarter. They scored a total of 18 points, and all 18 came from Donovan Mitchell. I just wish that they had another forward that came off their bench that was able to create his own shot or something along those lines. I just feel like it's a little bit thin. And now it is time for my ceiling, floor, and expectations for the Cleveland Cavaliers. Starting off with their ceiling, I could see them being as high as the 4 seed again, repeating the success that they had last year. I think the Cavs are able to compete with the top tier group of teams in the East. That top tier, I believe, is the Celtics, the Knicks, the Bucks, and the Sixers. No particular order there, but I feel like that's the top 4 teams. In this situation, obviously, if the Cavs are the 4 seed, they would be better than one of those teams, and I definitely could see it. The tough part about that would be that they would probably be versing one of those 4 teams in the first round. Obviously, the 4-5 matchup is always a bloodbath, especially with how good the Eastern Conference has been getting recently. And I do think that it would be a super competitive matchup. I think it would go at least 6 or 7. But when you're talking about a team that has a top-level defense anchored by 2 7-footers, you have one of the best bucket getters in the NBA in Donovan Mitchell. You have the new offense revamped and recoached by Kenny Atkinson. I could see them pulling off a mini upset and making it to the second round. I don't think they would be able to beat the Celtics or whoever ends up being that first seed out east, though, in that second round. That would be 2 really back-to-back tough matchups. So I think at their ceiling, they are a second round exit. Then when you look at the floor for the Cavs, I can see them being as low as the 6th seed. I think that they are pretty handedly above the play-in level of the Eastern Conference. I think that there are some teams that I could see jumping them, teams like the Pacers or those other 4 teams that I mentioned before. I could see finishing better than the Cavs. And then when you look at those 3-6 matchups, that would be a even tougher matchup in the first round that I just don't think the Cavs would be able to do. So at their floor, I think they're a first round exit. And for my expectations for the Cavs, I could see them finishing around that 5 seed. Now, even though they would technically finish as with a worse seeding than they did last year, I could see them being a better team while still regressing in the standings, just because, like I mentioned before, they largely stayed the same aside from the head coaching change, where teams like the 76ers, who were the 7th seed, partially because of injury and all of that, but still, they'll be healthy, and they added a guy like Paul George and a bunch of other high-level role players. I could definitely see them leapfrogging the Cavs and bumping them down a spot where, again, like I said, they could be a better team, but still have that worse seeding. And when you look at a playoff matchup between those 4-5s, like I said when talking about their ceiling, those are always bloodbaths, and I do expect it to still be competitive, but I don't expect the Cavs to really upset one of those top 4 teams out east, so I think that they would be a competitive first round exit. What about you guys, though? Let me know in the comments below where you think the Cavs will finish off this year and where they will land in the standings. I hope you guys enjoyed this video. If you did, make sure you leave it a like, subscribe so you don't miss the next one. In the description, there's links to all my social medias, so make sure you follow me on all those to keep up to date with me. Catch y'all.